All right, guys. So we're back. This is number two of the doubleheader for today. A couple weeks ago, when I did my last round, I had five in 1 week, I think. And I told myself I'm never doing more than two in 1 week again because it was crazy just trying to promote multiple per day. It was just insane. But I was able to plan these out well ahead of time. So it's getting better. The flow is getting better. So this is another episode of Legacy Dialogues and Legacy because everybody that I bring here before you, I really want them to be able to add something to what you have to offer, add something to your knowledge bank so that you can take it, utilize it, and be able to start creating a legacy for you and those who you care about. So, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest for tonight. This gentleman he's one of those types of people, and this is just me speaking. I read people through a certain lens, and just listening to him, he comes across as just a highly competent individual that doesn't have to do much to make himself seem more than what he is. And I really feel like the value he's going to be able to share today is going to demonstrate that competence and a certain level of self confidence. So, without further ado, Brandon Lee, how's it going?
I'm utterly fantastic.
I love it. I love it.
Oh,
Well,
good.
first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to join me tonight. And thank you just for taking the time to connect with me and us having the conversation that brought us here together tonight. Um, a lot of people have already hung it up and say, you know what, I'm shutting it down for the night. But those of us that really, we want to pour into others, we make a way whenever some people say ain't no way. So yeah, man. So before we get into any of the meat and potatoes of tonight, just kind of give the people a little synopsis. Who is Brandon Lee? Give me a little bit of the background, some of the things you got going on, and the direction you're going in life.
Happy to do it, man. Just wanted to take a second to give it back to you, though, real quick, Brian. The group we connected in has tens of thousands of people in it, right? And almost immediately, you stood out from the whole group, just in terms of your genuine, kind of no nonsense approach to addressing the market.
Mhm.
The very clear intent you have behind the messages that you've sort of curated for your audience, you really stood out as a professional, even in that group. So just getting on calls with you and being able to chop it up, brainstorm, it's been a pleasure. So just
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
taking the time to hang out, stay up late with me.
I
But yeah,
appreciate it, man.
my name is Brandon Lee. I always tell people, no, I don't know Kung Fu, but I have a business management and software development background. I've been sales and marketing for 20 years. I'm the founder of Sublime Success. And after many failures in business over the years, I've just come to learn a few key things that really help set people up to get a little closer to where they like to be. So I've worked in a variety of different industries with a variety of different people globally. And I really have a passion for helping people refine their ideas and deliver them to the market with a sense of purpose and clarity that I have found to be relatively unique, especially since I believe that uh, the results that we get to experience in life have a whole lot to do with the kind of people that we surround
Mm,
ourselves with.
exactly.
And that's just one of the biggest differences anybody ever learns to experience. And until you start getting around people that think that way, it's difficult to figure out, what you might need to do in order to take some of the fog and clear that away to get your ideas out there.
Yeah, and just so much of what you just said resonates with who I am, how I approach my networking, how I approach the people that I bring on this platform. One of the young ladies that actually commented on or reacted to the video already. I shared a post of hers earlier on my page because when I first connected with her in the same group, I saw that she's different. She approaches her work differently. She isn't your typical scammy, spammy type of marketer when it comes to what she has to offer. And she posted something this morning that really resonated with me because I'm the same way. And I commented on it. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Actually, I got it right here. She said. Let's see. What did she say? She said, "Get up. I wanted to lay in bed today too, but we're not going to change our lives or the lives of the ones who depend on us by laying and scrolling through videos. I see you. Love you. Bye." Like, she is the type of person, and if you look at a lot of my content, when I post something, most of the time I'm talking to myself, but I'm saying it in the light of, I know if I'm dealing with this, there's likely that somebody else out there is dealing with something similar. So this is what I'm doing to overcome it. Why don't I put this out there and see if that can benefit someone else? So yeah, man, like I saw that same and felt that same vibe with you, and that's what's got us here today. So tell me, or take us back a little bit. When did your entrepreneurial journey actually start?
I can go all the way back to sixth grade. I was 11 years old, you know?
Okay. Hey, talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a car detail company back then. One of my childhood friends, growing up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which is a strange thing to say because I'm born and raised in Detroit. I've been in Detroit, Michigan most of my life, but at that point I was in Virginia. And we printed out the flyers. We had the little cutouts. We put them in the laundromat, and we would just walk around the complex, cleaning and detailing cars for cash. But um, the idea was that seeing my grandfather actually was the biggest influence, the biggest drive on me. My family's been in the real estate business for a couple generations, and I knew that in order to have the kind of life I desired for my family, I would have to own something. I would need more than one source of income, and something that I could control to an extent. So from there, I dabbled in a lot: network marketing, multi level marketing, direct sales, product based businesses, service based businesses. Um, I got involved in a laundromat with someone who's like family to me, like my brother, commercial properties, leasing space to stylists, software development companies. I mean, I got a resume longer than a night in jail, but I think all of that I had experienced really equipped and prepared me to be able to relate to a wider variety of people. And that's probably one thing that sets me apart from a lot of the other people in similar spaces, is that I've just, to be honest, failed at more things than most people have even attempted. So I believe that's a key component to really refining a sense of purpose. So that's what's closest to home for me.
Yeah, and you have or had your early starts. You highly diversified the areas that you've operated in. I probably shared this statement with you. We commonly hear, "Ah, you're a jack of all trades, but a master of none." But that's not the full statement, and most people don't realize that that's not the full statement. The full statement is a jack of all trades, but a master of none is still better than a master of one, because we have so much value to give across the board. And yeah, I stated this on one of my previous sessions. Just think about it in today's day with all of the disruption with technology. There's certain individuals who are a master of just one specific space, and all of a sudden, technology just came through and wiped them out completely. They had no way to pivot. They had no value to give in other areas. So being diversified when it comes to how you can generate income, how you can help other individuals, I feel is just so important. So what would you say? What would you say? Kind of initiated that entrepreneurial spirit. Now you kind of laid out to us, some of the environment that you had that was conducive to it, but as it pertains to generation, what type of work did your parents do? Like, what was the example that you had as a child coming down from your parents?
So my grandfather unfortunately passed away when I was in elementary school, and that business was passed on to my aunt. And I got to observe a lot of moving pieces to the mortgage and real estate business. But I think more important than sort of the minutia and nuance of all the different paperwork and all the different contracts and the nuts and bolts of that particular industry, was the mindset that was necessary in order to really get results in a big way for your clients in that business. And I just remember seeing her and a few other people who were kindred spirits have that same mentality. So I remember what really kicked it off for me and just totally changed the trajectory of my whole life. I was a barista in the Southfield Library here, and a young man named Tremaine Goins asked me if I kept my business options open, and I'm like 18, so I feel like I'm supposed to have a good answer for that. Like, well, of course, as I'm dusting my apron off and trying to straighten up my posture. I had long hair. I know it's hard to imagine right now, but man, the hang time was crazy, man. It was all
Hey,
the
we're
way
gonna have
down
to
my
compare
back.
pictures. We're gonna have to compare pictures. I have some hang time too now.
Oh man, so we're talking like early 2000s at this point. But he introduced me to a multi-level marketing company at the time, which I believe was a spinoff of Amway. And I don't remember a whole lot about kind of the details of the company. But one thing that it did do was introduce me to a completely different philosophy for life, for finance, and um, relationships, every other aspect of my life. And it got me started in personal development.
Mm,
And every conversation we'd ever had with him and his colleagues was always about books and audios and what you've been reading and what you've been listening to. And I began to realize that if my life was going to change, I needed to connect with more people that I had a common future with versus just a common past.
hmm.
My circle at that time had the same sort of hobbies and interests most other 18-year-olds did. But again, every time I got around this group, it was about personal development. I started reading the Rich Dad series and Think and Grow Rich and all those other, classics. And the more that I learned, the more I realized how much I didn't know. But that also kept me in proximity to people who were very serious about changing their lives and leaving a legacy and setting an example for other people. So it wasn't just about power or the accumulation of power or wealth or resources. It was the proximity to power that helped me to understand what might be possible for me
Hmm.
if I could adopt a few key principles. So in my family, um, there were some people who were making significant income, but because of my age and my lack of experience, I could just observe, right? I could work with the books, I could run some errands, um, but I wasn't directly involved in a lot of the major moves or major decisions, understandably. But I could identify there was something very different about the mindset, about the work ethic, about the tenacity, about the need to stay positive. Like I would go to the radio station and check the voicemails and collect leads for the real estate mortgage company because my family had a radio show and it was automated. And people would call in and I'd be manning the phones, at
Hmm.
all hours of the night, collecting the leads and then bringing them back and then just watching to see what they did with it after they'd slept for maybe 2 or 3 hours. So it was really more about being able to observe the work ethic and seeing what they were doing while other people were entertaining themselves. They were working or educating themselves or refining a new skill set.
I love it, man. And just listening to so much of what you were dropping, I had to grab my notebook and take down some notes of just some of the relatability. So I look back. I'm the first in my lineage to jump into the business space, entrepreneurship space. But one of the messages that my dad left with me when I was about 10 years old, I was out in the yard and he had just come home from work. He was a blue collar worker, came home every day, tired, sweaty, and pain. And he told me, he said, Brian, when you grow up, I don't want you to have to go to work and come home hurting, smelly, and sweaty every day. I want you to go to work in a suit and tie, work in the air conditioner because you smart. You got a brain. I want you to use it. I took that to heart. But to take that to heart, I had to be different than everybody around me. All of my peers, all they knew was sports or blue collar industrial work. That's all that was those were the two examples of success or the path to success for somebody that was from where I was from that looked the way that I looked. So he taught me to go a different direction. So I had to move differently. And fast forward, when I was actually wrapping up my second undergraduate degree, I was reached out to by a distant cousin of mine, and he said something along the same lines, like you keep your your business, your mind open to business opportunities. And at the time, um, I forget exactly how, the conversation went, but ultimately he presented a company to me. I really wasn't feeling it at first, but I was keeping my mind open. And it wasn't until he got me on the phone with one of my favorite childhood NFL wide receivers, a guy by the name of Rod Smith from the Denver Broncos. So he got me on the phone with Rod Smith, and I'm like, so rocking with you, doing what you're doing, I can be in circles with people like this. Where do I sign up? So I'm thinking in my mind, environment. I can change my environment by being connected to something like this. Fast forward a couple of months, we're going to the very first convention, personal development. I had never heard, that those two words put together, personal development. The whole ride to Dallas, we're listening to Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Myron Golden, like Earl Nightingale, like the legends. And I'm like, what is this stuff? And one of the girls, who was putting in, this was like 2012, she had some CDs. She was putting the CDs in, and she's like, it's personal development content. You got to listen to this. And I'm like, I'm digging this. And literally, after we came back from that convention, I was all about the personal development because I was already getting traditional education. I was working on my second college degree. So I was getting that taken care of. But now I can partner this traditional education with this self education. And I'm like, man, I'm about to go out here and make some things happen. Now, initially, I ran into a whole bunch of hurdles. I'm just young in the space, shooting myself in the foot, saying too much when I didn't know what I was talking about. So I got to where I say, you know what, let me pipe down and just really start to educate myself and also learn this industry. So I started to read even more. But I was more so of the individual. And I think I mentioned this to you the last time that we spoke. I took the same philosophy from school and apply that to self education when it came to reading. I wouldn't pick up a book and read it from cover to cover and say I read that. I'd pick up a book, I'd read a couple paragraphs or a couple chapters, and I would take some notes and take some principles from those chapters and I apply it to my life and see if I got results. If I'm not getting results, I'm probably not going to keep reading this book. So I would do that with book to book to book to book to book, and slowly but surely I saw myself changing. Before being introduced to this, I'm pointing my fingers at other people. The reason I wasn't where I wanted to be. I'm complaining about everything under the moon. The reason I wasn't where I wanted to be. But this personal development really started to change my mindset, and slowly but surely it got me, to where I am today. So when you first got a hold of this personal development, this mindset thing. Kind of tell me how your friend group kind of shifted, because I'm gonna make some assumptions that things started to change a little bit for you when you started to change.
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't happen any other way. It's a law. But it was a very long journey. I think on the subject of personal growth, first and foremost, the hardest part, the most challenging aspect to that whole paradigm isn't what you have to give up, but who. And starting at 18 years old and not really seeing a hint of success in any degree until I was almost 30. I've been, through a variety of different companies, a variety of different experiences, from homelessness to couch surfing to, getting caught up in things that would have had me dead or in jail. Ended up in all kinds of different groups. But the circle continued to change as I changed, as you've implied yourself. And the process was difficult initially because we want to remain with the people that we're most familiar with. And we want to
Mhm.
take them with us when we get really excited about where we can go. We want to be able to take the people we care about with us along the way. And I think it was Wale was rapping in one of his songs. He said, "When I was on my way up, why you ain't see the stairs?"
Mm, mm,
But I started to realize that, I was never going to get where I wanted to go if I didn't really focus on um, why I was going there. And as much as I wanted to have a few key people with me along the way, it was far more important to keep going for the people I hadn't even met yet,
mm.
like my children who weren't born at the time. But you begin to realize that a lot of these conversations are more about how much you want something for someone more than they want it for themselves. And incidentally, when you relinquish yourself from the illusion of control, you begin to attract like minded people into your circle who never would have fit there if those spaces were still occupied by the people who had no desire to go along with you. So it's like that. If you look at it in terms of societal hierarchies or, echelons of success, on the bottom tiers, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of scarcity mentality. And as you
Mhm.
begin to move closer towards the realization of your potential, you start to see a lot more cooperation and collaboration because there's no one of us that's as smart as all of us.
Facts.
So when we begin to work together, there are things that become possible within that circle of like-mindedness that were impossible before. And I think that's really comes down to is the idea of compatibility with the like-minded.
Yeah.
Um, that's that's just it's a major key. It's like when you're headed in one direction, even if I use like a car as a metaphor, if you'll indulge me for a moment, if you're locked in and going one way, and compatibility is like looking to your left or to your right, depending on what country you're from, and seeing that someone else is going in the same direction. So you just decide, since we're going in the same direction, let's just go together. Right? And your older friends would have wanted to race you,
Right.
right?
That is so true. That is so
Slash your
true.
tires.
Right. I mean, there are so many analogies that we can use. So just to kind of, I don't even want to say tie a bow around it because we're going to keep going even deeper. So two of the things that I wrote down, mindset and positivity. Gurus gurus have a tendency of hijacking science and watering it down and making it difficult for those of us that actually understand principle based, scientifically based work, scientifically based laws of existence, of being, of growth, make it to where it's more difficult for us to get the message across to individuals at times. So we hear the law of attraction, we hear, the book series, The Secret. So they speak to some of the things that feel good that make people think, oh my goodness, I can have that only if I do this. But it's not that simple. There's repetition that comes in play. There's sacrifices that come in play. There's the understanding of keeping the distractions at bay and watering, continuing to nurture that which you desire to grow. One of my favorite, um, I wouldn't say quotes, but sections of a book is The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, where he says, we have to liken the human brain to fertile land, whereas it doesn't care what you plant in it. It will return to you in abundance that which you plant and take care of. You can plant poison ivy, any type of just poisonous, destructive crop, and you take care of it, it's gonna grow to abundance. Or you can plant corn, crops that can nurture you. Take care of it, keep all the weeds away. those crops will grow. Your brain is the same way. If you continue to expose yourself to those individuals that have been there, that have done that, that have the positive mindset, they're not delusional. They understand that things happen, but they don't allow those things that happen to become them. So
Right.
keeping that positive mindset, but at the same time understanding the losses. Like you mentioned earlier, you had a number of losses. You have more losses than most people have had attempts. So until
Yes,
we
sir.
go through the losses, we can never truly respect the beauty in the wins. The wins don't feel as nice when you haven't tasted loss before. So having that mindset of resilience to continue to push forward, but surround yourself with those who are going to encourage you instead of throwing you that pity party when you fall on your face. And one more thing that Napoleon Hill mentioned, you just made reference to. You said that you're going to impact people who you haven't even met yet. So I forget which chapter in his book. I don't know if it was Think and Grow Rich or The Law of Success. Whereas he mentioned that the interviews he was doing, the work that he was doing, is going to change the lives of people who've not even been born yet. So when we look at it through a servant leadership lens like that, we don't have all these things that can jump in front of us and distract us and throw us off that desire for instant gratification. Whereas so many people, I need to get it for me right now. And as soon as something happens to where they feel like I can't get it for me right now, squirrel, they're on to the next thing. So having that mindset of I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing this for the lives that it can and will impact generations to come. And when we have that approach, it makes it so much easier to flow. Was it Jet Li? Or was it was Jet Li that I think it was Jet Li. Oh, Bruce Lee that
Be like
said,
water.
be like water. You can crash or you can flow. Flow, be like water, take form of the environment, but don't allow that environment to completely encapsulate you. Water can be destructive and water can bring life. So figure out how you can be that individual to not destruct what can be in the future by wanting something right here and now, but flow with the direction, flow with the ebbs and the flows, and go in a certain direction, but also understand when to go against the grain, when to not allow yourself to fall into some of those patterns of those who are going in the wrong direction. So we can actually, speaking of that, and I don't want to make this political, but in the season that we're in right now with this new presidential administration, something that I did on election night was prepare with two contingencies in place. So if this party took over, I'm going to take this action, and this action because I know how it can bring business. I know how it can impact lives if I do that. If this party takes office, I'm going to take this action, and this action because I know how I can win and how I can impact lives doing that. Now, they're completely different ends of the spectrum, but how I move doing one, I know how to, make an impact on the other side as well. So you going into 2025, will say, what are some moves that you have taken so far, just to make sure that you maximize some of the things that may be beneficial going into this new administration.
That's an excellent question. My philosophy has always been, and to piggyback on something you just mentioned a moment ago, and I can't say always been, that's not accurate, but a philosophy I've adopted is to never do with force what should be done in flow. So I'm
Mm,
not really locked in on what happens in the White House. I'm locked in on what happens in my house. And that's
I
not
love
to
it.
say that I keep my head in the sand and pretend that, nothing's changing or going to change and everything's going to be the same. But there are principles that when we observe them and make them a part of our lives, part of our governing philosophies, it doesn't matter what the prevailing administration is doing to a degree, right? Within reason. You still use gold as a hedge against inflation and, keep a few other basic financial disciplines. But I know that because I made a decision to serve and to lead by serving, to remain genuine, to remain consistent in the message that I bring across to the market and how I portray myself to people, I know that the people who are going to be in alignment or congruent with or attracted to my unique value in the market will be consistent. That'll be the
Mm-hmm.
same, right? So there's a certain value in being a chameleon per se, but I'm not looking to work with everybody,
Exactly.
right? So what I like most about um, the other side of the coin when it comes to political volatility and some of the more violent changes that can happen psychologically in a really intense political climate is it's so polarizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just to reach the the pinnacle of that office, half the country has to hate you, or at least act like they do. But it makes it a lot easier for the people who are looking for you to find you when
Exactly.
you've made a decision to be very genuine, very clear about who you are and what you stand for and the causes that you care about. And I think it's important to remain that way regardless of, what happens, when somebody else takes office.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't observed anything that's going to like radically change my life or the lives of the people I love. So I just, I've made a decision to continue to deliver value at the highest possible level by first and foremost working on myself every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, being clear about who I'm serving and how, so that they can find me when they look for me.
That's it, man. And that's what so many lack the capacity to consistently do, at least, is be who they are and not be swayed by, the popular opinion. I actually did a video earlier for a community that I'm part of, and it was on men's mental health or men's health. And I just
Mm.
spoke on the importance of being an independent thinker. Whereas if you can be an independent thinker, you can continue to stay or stick close to your integrity, your actual values, without necessarily having to rub anybody else the wrong way, because it's who you are and it's who you have been, demonstrating yourself to be on a consistent basis. And when you go into, we'll say, from one administration to another, and you automatically just make an assumption that my life is going to be horrible because, or now my life is going to be great because, you're giving up autonomy. You're giving up your independent ability to make a change for yourself. And it's one of the things that really saddens me is when someone has an assumption that something is going to happen for them because of someone on the external, on the outside, influencing them, and that they have no wherewithal to make any change for themselves. So I think it's just so important, as you mentioned, to sticking close to your values, but actually understanding what are your values. Who is it that you truly desire to serve? What impact do you genuinely aim to make? Not the impact that someone said you should be making, not the impact that someone said you should, shy away from, but who are you actually? And when you can consistently articulate that across the board, that's when you will be good, regardless of who comes into power. To a certain degree, some crazy things can happen here or there, but staying consistent in who you are, you know, it's going to get you to where it is you desire to get to. So,
Yes, sir.
um, you mentioned, you made reference to it, we dug deep into it earlier, the importance of self education, of reading, personal development, just for the the benefit of the viewers, those who are watching.
Sure.
Who Give me your top three individuals that you go to, be it your contemporaries, be it someone from back in the day, who are the top three people that you would say you really allowed to pour into you when it comes to your personal development? And I'm gonna plug this in right quick.
Yeah, no doubt. It's Let me see. So I think the first book I ever read on personal development was How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Sales by Frank Becker. And that really opened my mind to the difference between, I think these terms were popularized by a psychologist, Carol Dweck, whose work you might be familiar with based on your background, where she talked about the difference between a growth mindset and a scarcity mindset. But Frank Becker's book was my first time reading for education, not reading because an essay was due and I wasn't trying to
Yeah.
fail a class, right? But the whole mentality of somebody that was determined to succeed, it blew me away. And then from there, I dove into the Rich Dad series by Robert Kiyosaki. I read all of that, every single one of those books. Then I read Think and Grow Rich. Then I read one of the cornerstones of personal development, How to Influence People. And to this day, I still listen to Jim Rohn almost regularly. I think from
Hmm.
2016 to 2019, every day for an hour to 2 hours per day, it was Jim Rohn. Once your mind starts to expand, it never goes back to its original
Yes.
form. And it helped me to have more carefully curated conversations in rooms that I never would have had access to if I
Hmm.
didn't get better at adequately articulating ideas and disciplining my emotions. All stuff that I learned from him. My coach and mentor, Dr. Myron Golden, said that every thought, every word, every deed, and every dollar is a seed planted into the garden of my future. And it's because of all of those audios, all of those books, that I have any hope of realizing anything different in the future. John Maxwell said change is the only guarantee that tomorrow gets better. So all of that is a part of who I am fundamentally. One of my first mentors told me to turn my car into a school, turn the car
Mm.
into a classroom,
Automobile
because
University.
yeah, and this was like before I could, hook the aux up and listen to YouTube because I didn't have like a commercial free subscription at the time. So I had to like open up the book of CDs, and when everybody else was listening to the radio, I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki, I was listening to Eric Worre, I was listening to Jim Rohn, I was listening to Zig Ziglar, and um, some of the giants of Amway back in the day, just to get my mind right. Because if I didn't brainwash myself into believing I could win no matter what, then the slightest inconvenience would be enough to knock me off course.
Hmm.
And it's so much easier to fall back into those old patterns. We get so
Yeah.
familiar with failure that we forget all of the promise of the favor that we have access to. So I needed to make myself more aware of what was possible. And by increasing my awareness of possibility through the books I read and the courses I attended and the mentors I got, more became probable
Hmm.
in the direction that I wanted to go in. So I'm always reading something. You can find me in the Westland Library to this day. I just picked up a book called Designing Your Life by a couple of Harvard, not Harvard, Stanford architectural professors. And there's metaphors for designing a better life, in terms of your habits, disciplines, and practices, and like literally building out structures architecturally and designing them.
That's
It's a pretty
beautiful.
interesting read, but
I love it. You can have to send me that. You have to send me that. That title over. um, so something that you mentioned was brainwashing yourself to believe that certain things were possible. Um,
yep.
if we, and this is for anybody who's listening, Unless you're out in the middle of the woods and there's no civilization around you, you can look up, right, left, down, and you see something that was only a thought. Pictures, start up here. It's a thought. This table, this phone, the TV. It was only a thought, but someone had the audacity, because of some brainwashing that they had the audacity to believe that this could become reality. The only difference between them and you is changing your mindset to where you have the audacity to go after the things that started as an idea up here. But as Les Brown says, the wealthiest place in the world is a graveyard, because most people don't act on it. They go to the grave with those ideas still inside them. And the possibility is there for everyone. And a lot of people get it twisted. The possibility is there for everyone, but the probability increases when you start to change what's up here. The probability increases when you start to surround yourself with those individuals that is a norm for. The probability starts to change when you stop just scrolling for entertainment, just watching TV for entertainment, hanging around with people that have no desires out of life. The probability increases when you're highly intentional with your time, your attention, where you put it, who you give it to, and how much you pour back out. That intentionality can increase your probability. Whereas so many people will see you say, I'm going to do, I'm working towards, and they automatically tell themselves, that's impossible. No, it's improbable for you, but it's possible for all of us because you don't
Agree.
have the audacity to go after it. And I'm that crazy guy that is out here, this business, talking about business, sitting in a social work class, people looking at me sideways. What is he even talking about? A year or so after graduation, those same people reaching out to me. Hey, Brian, you hiring? Nah, you ain't want to listen to me when I was this weird guy talking about business and entrepreneurship in a social work class. You have to have the audacity to be different, to have the earbuds in. That summer that I was about to graduate, it was the summer that I went to that trip, to Dallas on that trip. I had my earbuds in. I was doing yard work for this lady across town, and like you said, every day for like an hour plus. I'm talking about if I'm in the yard, if I'm doing dishes, every day I had it in, and it was reprogramming. Now we look at these phones, and as soon as a little red dot comes up by that little gear icon, we tap on it and we go and do a software update. We go and upgrade the programming in our phone. But the red dot is always going off up here. We never take the time to realize, you know what, I need to upgrade. I need to reprogram how I'm thinking, because the current thinking got me to where the current thinking can't get me out of.
That's
So I
right.
have to
Oh,
reprogram
behind
in
Sky.
order to fit into the new world. So on that front, what are some of the things that you would say? Because I have a lot of individuals that I'm working with right now that are in that beginner stage of entrepreneurship. Now, this is one thing that I dropped in the notes for us to make sure that we hit on is entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. um, Partnering with a company to see how little work I can do and ride whatever momentum is taking place, whatever hot, buzzy product is going, the least amount of work as I can to try and make some money so I can call myself an entrepreneur. Compared to the people that I'm going to build this from scratch, I'm going to go get the LLC, make sure I got my articles of incorporation, I got my Duns and Bradstreet number, like all the P's of the pod. I'm building this on my back. Not to say that you have to always keep it only on your back. You can grow and scale, but what would you tell someone that is kind of like they have that true desire to build something in the entrepreneurial space, but they're kind of just sitting safely on that um, affiliate side of things and call themselves an entrepreneur, but they're really just trying to play it safe.
It's an interesting dichotomy because the word entrepreneur, by definition, involves risk. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the word. So, I'm not the kind of person that would try to belittle or talk down to somebody by making all of these distinguishing delineations around what kind of entrepreneur you are, or you're not a real entrepreneur if you're an affiliate, or you're not a real entrepreneur if you got in something where the barrier of entry was down here. I mean, risk is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For the person, for the single dad dreaming, living check to check, that took half of his rent money to get involved in a direct sales or e-commerce opportunity or an affiliate opportunity, that's a huge risk, And I have nothing but respect for that guy and want to see him win in the biggest way possible to really put a dent in the universe and make a difference for his family.
Right.
And to me, that person is no different than, the late 20s person that took really good care of their credit, that studied all the right classes, that got around the right people, that qualified for the grants and loans, and did the traditional approach and went in debt, couple $1 million. Like, I'm not going to dance around, the minutia and the nuance of the issue to say who somebody is or isn't based on whatever classification society deems as appropriate. Because you
Mm-hmm.
never become rich trying to be socially accepted,
Right.
right? But you're always socially accepted when you're rich.
Facts.
So, at the end of the day, the person that's dreaming needs to understand that everything we ever do flows from who we think we are.
Mm-hmm.
So a playbook that says, here are the steps that you need to take in order to have a profitable business is great if you are the person who can do the steps.
Exactly.
We all know that in order to have something else, we need to do something different. But there's a prerequisite to doing that almost everyone overlooks, which is being. And that's the whole order of operations throughout all of reality. It's be, then do, then have. So since a person's identity is what governs their beliefs, which is what governs their behaviors and the results that they experience, that's what we have to address. That's what we have to spend our time talking about. I remember I got involved, I partnered up with the world's largest direct seller of essential services in 2012. And one of the first calls I made as I was prospecting and inviting people to take a look at the opportunity was to a Black owned small business that was an arcade. The guy was one of the first people in Great Lakes Crossing, which is an enormous mall in Michigan, to have the gaming systems with the recliners and the giant TVs, and everybody could come in and rent time to play. Same as Leland Walker. And I had what I thought at the time was a little bit of money, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, what should I do with this money? How can I help? How can I put this money to work and make it grow? And Layla said, buy a book.
Mm.
And I had maybe $1,800 or something like that. It was nothing really, but to me it was everything. So I'm thinking I can really start making some moves now. I read Robert Kiyosaki. Let me make some investments and move over to this other quadrant. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But Leila said, buy a book, bro. You need to invest in yourself.
Right.
Over time, I came to realize that that's the best advice, some of the best advice I ever got, because yes, you can reliably predict how your money will perform in the market under certain conditions, but what you invest in your own personal education pays off in ways that stagger the imagination,
Mm-hmm.
because you never know what idea is going to be inspired multiplicatively by the ideas that are being created in your mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the first thing, is to understand that they need to get in touch with who they really are. They have to surrender to the to a purpose without necessarily knowing what the purpose is. So I was taught that right at the intersection of passion and proficiency is where a person finds their purpose. The thing that really makes them feel alive, that makes them happy, and the thing that they're really good at. And like where
Hmm.
these two things meet is generally where people find a sense of purpose. And that's also why I think entrepreneurship is essential for just about everybody to some degree, because fulfillment is something everybody wants. And it's defined differently, it's realized at different levels. But I think if we can have like an honest heart to heart conversation about that concept as it relates to identity and as it relates to what's necessary for a person to move off of the sidelines and begin to take on more risk as an owner, fulfillment is about creation, connection, and contribution. And these three components you'll find in the life of any relatively successful entrepreneur,
Hmm.
is they've created something. And it doesn't necessarily mean a cake or a new piece of tech. It could be an ebook, it could be a course. You can create ideas in other people's minds with skillful communication. The idea, the ability to be able to paint pictures with words that you can hang on the corridors
Exactly.
of people's minds. You know, they walk by that and they think of you every time. So they have to submit to the fact that they have a point and purpose, that they exist here for a reason, and show up to
Exactly.
serve in every arena that they walk into before they ever decide to sell anything. They just commit to service. You remember listening to Zig Ziglar back in the day
Oh
saying that
yeah,
service to many is the key to
things to
greatness.
greatness.
You
Exactly.
know?
Yeah, and and that's the mindset that goes over so many people's head. And just based off of everything that you just gave me, my big takeaway is start where you are, take the risks that you can take based off of where you currently are, but never stop growing, because to continue to reach higher levels, you're going to have to continue to reinvent yourself, continue to grow, continue to learn more, and eventually be willing and able to take more risk. But then, that intersection that you mentioned, and how I usually lay it out to my clients is I use the three passion, unique skill set, and natural talent, like where those intersect. It doesn't have to be all three of them, but a good combination of at least two of them where they connect, that can be where you really take off. Because you
Yeah.
have something you're passionate about, but I don't care how passionate you are if you suck at it. I don't care how passionate if you are if you don't have any talent with it. So lots of people, we have our life experience as our unique skill set. Just the fact that we lived through certain things, we've learned how to do certain things proficiently. And for those of us who went to higher levels of education, you started to get higher levels of unique skill sets based off of what you're studying. Not a natural talent, that's just something that, it comes with you. And when you can marry the three of those, a talent that is just natural for you, and you're finding something that you can do, a problem that you can solve, a solution that you can bring that lines up with something that comes natural, something that you've already studied and developed a skill set around, and you actually love it too, you almost have struck gold. But what are you going to do with it? Like, what are you going to build? What are you going to design? What are you going to create? And that's where the creativity comes along, where you connect with the right people, and literally having a conversation with one person can spark an idea that changes your entire life.
Yeah, man.
So it's one of the reasons why I love to have these dialogues, because there's things that I take from those of you that I bring on that enriches my brain, that enriches the things that, what, I need to implement that and what I've been working on. And and I'll tell you, 2014, I was part of a company called Organo Gold. Maybe you've heard of it.
Oh yeah.
So I was part of Organo Gold. That was the very first company in the whole network marketing space that I partnered with. A gentleman by the name of Jared Wilkins. He was training at the event in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And one thing that he said that stuck with me, and it applies in any type of entrepreneurial and or investment endeavor, is friends and family won't start to support you until strangers start to celebrate you. So, with a lot of my clients that get highly depressed because their mom, their aunt, their cousin won't support their business, so now they think they're going to fail. You got to get out here and find some strangers, because those strangers, they don't know who you were. They don't know the failures that you've had. They don't know the lack of success that you've experienced. Your friends and family know that old version of you. So to a certain degree, you can't fault them for not wanting to jump into what you have to offer. They know where you were. But these strangers, they only know what you tell them. They only know the ambition that you're laying out in front of them right now. And if they can latch arms with you with the ambition that you have right now, you can go forward with so much more force and become that success, to where down the line, you got family and friends looking at you. Who that my baby over there on stage with? And then you reach back, well, mama, I try to tell you, but nah, they had to see, they had to, what is it called? Proof of concept. They had
Something
to
like
see it
that.
in action before they were willing, to put their, their reputation on the line for it. So, off that note, man, what are some things before we get ready to wind down? What are some things that you're working on right now? Some things that you're doing to help the masses, and that maybe some people can partner up with you, to change the trajectory of where they're going in life.
Well, I created something recently called the Side Gig Quiz. And this is something I put together painstakingly over a period of time, because one of the observations I made in all of my networking and consulting was that almost everybody has a desire for a little bit more, but it's difficult to determine what opportunity is going to be the best fit for them. In what areas or what avenues should they invest their time and resources?
Mm-hmm.
So the quiz is something that helps people to determine what their niche is. There's a series of questions that they can answer in 2 to 3 minutes, and at the end, it will deduce, based on the information they've provided, what niche suits them best. Whether it's tech based, whether it's a flexible gig based kind of thing, whether it's more creative, or whether it's more people driven. So the side gig quiz is completely free. I can drop a link in here somewhere. I'm actually not sure how to do that on this platform, but it's no
Yeah,
big deal.
actually, if you just read it out to me, if or you can drop it into I don't know if you saw where I sent you a
Oh
message
yeah, yeah,
earlier.
yeah. No doubt.
Yeah,
I see it
drop
right
it in
here.
there.
I'll go ahead and put that right there. Yep, it's completely free. It takes 2 to 3 minutes, and once they complete it, it'll tell them what their niche is exactly, and if they choose to, if they want to take it a step further and actually start working within that niche. I wrote several books. It's going to point them to one of those guides that'll show them step by step exactly what to do to make at
Mhm.
least their first $1,000 or so over the next 30 days in the field that suits them best. My calendar is completely full for the rest of this quarter for coaching and consultation, but my waiting list is available. I'll drop that in here as well. I can begin to start taking in new clients somewhere around April, if things continue to move at the pace that they are moving at, which they will,
All right.
because
And I want you to say that again for the people in the back. That part about your calendar being full for the entire quarter. Like, and it's, I say that because I'm sure, I'm gonna let you say it. I'm not even gonna put words in your mouth. How did you get your calendar full for the entire quarter already?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions in entrepreneurship is people believe that they have to really aggressively go after finding people to sell their stuff to. And I believe, and this is something I learned from a coach who really helped change my life, that instead of finding people to sell stuff to, it's more valuable to be findable for people who already want to buy what you already want to sell in the first place. So if you're somebody that has a business and you're kind of wondering, like, what's it going to take to make this thing grow? there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people who would love to buy what you're selling if they only knew you existed. So over the years, one thing I learned in network marketing was to just increase my awareness, was
Mm,
to always be conscious of the value that I could bring to somebody else's life, even if it's just in a couple seconds of conversation at the gas station, even if we're just in the elevator, even if we're in line at Tim Hortons because the drive-through is ridiculous and you usually get faster service in the store. But anyway, it's like, can I smile? Can I just give them a compliment, say a kind word? Can I ask better quality questions to get a better quality conversation and make a memorable impression? So my phone only has at this point just over 2,100 contacts in it, but I learned from Brian Carruthers in his book Building an Empire that it's important to learn how to stay in touch in a meaningful way.
mhm,
And if you're working one on one or in a small group as a culture consultant, there's only so much time in the day. Anyway, it doesn't take, thousands and thousands of clients to book your calendar, especially if you're really intentional about finding out what's valuable to your audience and then obsessing over delivering that value in a way that they never could have believed possible before they met
mhm,
you. So everywhere you show up, whether it's in Facebook groups, whether it's in the break room at work, whether it's, in the fellowship hall where you worship, show up to serve, show up to help. People will ask if there is a way that they can begin, if they can work with you, what else you're into,
mhm,
what you're involved in, how they can connect with you over time. I was doing a contract a um, for a logistics company that was partnered with Amazon, and when I was doing dispatch management, one of the employees would kind of just kick it with me at the desk for maybe 5, 10 minutes a day. When I was there for a couple hours a day a few years ago, and after a couple weeks of that, he just asked me like, "Do you have a course I can buy? Do you like where? How can I work with you outside of here?" And it just opened my mind up to the principle, which is the more you seek to serve, the less you'll have to seek to sell.
mhm. That is that is it. And the first thing that you mentioned, which is one of the first things that and I'm doing a training tomorrow morning for one of my clients, probably going to be about 2.5, 3 hours long. And one of the things that I focus on in the training is the customer journey. And the very first part of the customer journey is awareness. Like people need to know that you exist. You can have the best product, best service in the world, but if you don't have awareness and as far as scalability, if you don't know how to retain, if you don't have a retention system in place, you're gonna always be spinning your wheels and assuming like I'm working hard, but I'm not getting the results because you're not working smart enough. So I appreciate that
Yes,
input.
sir.
But yeah, man, I started in May of last year, being super intentional on my networking, and it has caused my clientele to just skyrocket. And like you said, the meaningful connections, giving value meaningfully, people will come to you. Literally, from doing one of these, I got a client because they saw the value, the authentic value, and she reached out to me. Hey, I got a question about that post. I put a post up, and then she said, I watched your video with such and such the other day, and I need help with XYZ. I said, send me an
Okay.
email of exactly what you need help with. I'll send you back a response with some feedback and let you know how I can help you. Within less than 2 days, I had her on contract. So giving value, and it's one of the things sometimes when I'm speaking, I tell individuals the importance of sowing. You just get up there and you just got to sow and then sow some more and sow some more. And then after that, you you might look around, then sow some more. And when you finish doing that, you sow a little bit more. And you just keep realizing I just gotta sow. But so many people, they'll sow a little bit from a harvest. When am I going to reap? So a
Yeah,
little
man.
bit, when you turn it around, you're blocking your blessings. But when you stay focused on giving, serving, before you know it, boom, yep, your blessing came and got you. So,
Right in the
you
back
know
of
how
the
they say,
head.
yeah, don't chase the bag, like chase the impact that you're looking to make, and the bag will come get you. You know, same thing I mentioned in my post when I shared with, about the young lady that I mentioned earlier. I mentioned to her in the post, this is why success continues to come and get you, because you're putting out value like this. You have this type of mindset. And that's the thing, man. When we
Yes,
start to
sir.
change this up here, slowly but surely, success will come and get you. But you got to get out of your own way. I haven't read through a whole bunch of the book yet, just read bits and pieces. But Tyrese Gibson, he wrote a book called How to Get Out of Your Own Way.
That
And
sounds
that's
good.
that's it. So many people are just in their own way. You're blocking your own blessings. Let go of the ego. Stop thinking you made it. Stop thinking just because you have a certain title that you can't listen, you can't learn from somebody else. It's one of the reasons when I'm introduced to go and speak in a school specifically, I always come back behind it. They'll say he's got all these different degrees, started these businesses, yada yada yada. And then when I go out, see that guy that they just introduced, he's a college flunky. He got kicked out of school. So I take them through that bit of the story that most people don't want you to know about. But when you can drop down and be relatable, take the ego off, stop living based off of your title and live based off of the impact that you can make, everything else will fall together.
It's
So
incredible. Humility will make you a fortune.
that's real, man. But it ain't gonna make you a fortune overnight. And everybody in today's day chasing that overnight success.
Yeah,
But
man.
slowly but surely, they'll learn. Sometimes it'll be too late for them to benefit from it. Sometimes they can turn things around. But with that being said, man, thank you again for your time.
Oh,
I
thank
know,
you.
I'm a lot of people probably dozing off by now, but when you want to give value, no matter what time it is, we're gonna make it happen. So,
That's right,
any
man.
final words, man, before we call it a night?
I just appreciate the opportunity to get together and hang out online and just chat, chop it up. I love talking mindset. I love talking success. And I love delivering value. But the only reason I'm even here able to have a conversation like this is because we decided we need to see what's valuable to one another and what's valuable
Mhm.
to our offense, to our audience. I think a lot
Exactly.
of people get caught up on value as a buzzword, you know, because it sounds really good, but it's the kind of thing you can't uncover until you are intentional about seeing what's really valuable to people. You got to find out.
Exactly.
Got to
Yeah.
ask the right questions. Saying
Yes,
value
sir.
doesn't make you valuable, but
Exactly.
a lot of
What
people feel like it does.
right? What can come out of your mouth and continue of value to come out of your mouth after you say I'm giving value? Okay. Let me ask you this question: how deep can you go? So yeah, man, I absolutely love it. I look forward to having you on again. We could have a specific topic that we dive even deeper into, because
Yeah.
for one, people need to hear the consistency and not think, oh, he just had a prepared something, and that's the only reason he sounded so eloquent. No, when
Maybe
you
I
live
should
it,
prepare some next time.
when you, and I'm telling you, man. So my daughter has had a presentation this past week, and you know how in grade school so many kids just like copy and like put all this print up there and they try to read it and it just completely throws them off. I did a presentation for the state of Mississippi, Mississippi Behavioral Health Learning Network yesterday. I had 150 attendants, and I put together the slides literally the morning before the presentation because everything that I wanted to deliver, it was already in here. So I just needed just a little points to refer back to and just a little content for them to be able to, to read through as I'm giving, examples, case studies, so on and so forth. But when it's in you, you don't need a whole lot of structure to be able to go out and deliver a highly articulate presentation. But you
Talk
want
to him,
some
B.
type of structure.
Let
You
him
got to have
know.
some type of, man. I'm telling you, man. in
Never
20,
forget, y'all. A prepared man is always better than a prepared message.
that's so real. That is so real. And I'll end on this. So I got in the speaking space back in 2014 in Miami, Florida, speaking in front of churches to recruit foster parents.
Oh,
It was at that point that I learned you don't have to read off of something. You don't have to have something point by point by point that you're referring back to be able to drive a message home and move people to action. You have to have a passionate, coming from the heart, real message, and that can move people to action. I was walking from class when I moved back to Mississippi. I was already speaking all over the place. One of the girls in my cohort asked me, "So B, man, I dig how you do your speaking thing. Like, what do you do to prepare before your speech? It's like, do you have like a note card? Like, what? It comes from here. You have to be before you can go out and try to do." And it was one of the messages that she reached out to me a few years later. She had moved back to the East, the West Coast. And she told me that she thinks back on that when she has to go and deliver a I forget it what they called it in her organization, but she really took her work to heart to where she didn't have to necessarily have these case notes to speak to her supervisor about what had been going on. She really dove into her work and learned about her clients and her patients to where she can have an articulate conversation with her supervisor without having to read verbatim. And that's just the message that I pour into everybody. Become that which you have a passion to deliver to the masses. Internalize it, and it'll be natural. You can have a conversation with anybody. I don't care if it's a janitor or the CEO, and you can confidently and competently come across to that individual without having to water down or trying to hype up your vibe. So I'm off that note, man. Thank you for the last time. I'm gonna put you backstage. I'm gonna close out with the audience, then I'll come back and close out with you, and then we'll call it a night.
all right, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Guys, it is 10:18 here, Central Time, and I'm amped enough to do a whole other hour or so. But for the sake of time, for those who are watching, who are listening, and my brother Brandon Lee, who don't necessarily know too much Kung Fu, uh, we're going to call it a night. Thank you guys for tuning in. For those of you who are watching the replay, don't hesitate to drop a comment, question. I'll be reaching back out. And check out the comment section if you're on Facebook. I drop it into the description on YouTube. All of the links that Brandon left for us. With that being said, guys, I'm out. I'm about to go lay down. Um, I still got some work to do, but at least I'm gonna lay down for a bit. Much love, guys. We'll see you back here sometime next week. Just keep your eyes out. Take care.